Hi everyone, I'm back with another Season 8 video, this time about the Death Trap Rogue. Maybe you have seen or heard about this already, but this is one of the top builds in the game. It goes super fast, it is tanky, it has crazy AoE, it destroys Tone 4 bosses, and it can push pit beyond 100 at this point. So it is extremely good at everything and an absolute blast to play. So I want to show you what this is about, how to set this up, because what you see here right now is a character that at this point was around 3 hours old or something like that on hardcore. And of course you can go way higher and farm like 70s, 80s or something like that in like 60 to 90 seconds with this build. So this is how crazy it can be. And I will also probably make some kind of follow-up once I have this more min-maxed. But before I jump in, I want to show you off also the max roll guide that we have here. Mippy has been working on this for this time around. And we also have the different like starter, ancestral, mythic variants, pit pushing as well. So you can find all of the written breakdowns here. You can go to different variants, for example. And I'll also link this down here in the description. So this is what this video is based on and what this setup is based on. But I have also been doing some kind of freestyling here in order to actually make it work with the stuff I had, because I started as rogue with nothing. I had like, just a bunch of like items in my stash, but none of the rogue stuff, for example. And I was able to get to Torment 4 in like 3 hours from creating the character, basically. And this is what that looked like in the end. So a lot of people have, for example, issues trying to set this up and getting the combo to work properly with the cooldown and the resources. And there are various ways of solving this. And many of those things can be done in the early game already before you actually have the entire combo. By now, I've obviously found some of the bosses, I have really good stuff here, and I have the full combo online. So let's talk about the basics here. The way the setup works is that you spam Death Trap as much as possible. In fact, all the time. So this is usually an ultimate with a long cooldown, but you can get it low enough so that you can reset it instantly. And the way that this reset combo usually works is that you get the base cooldown down to something like around 10 and a half seconds, just based on ranks and cooldown reduction, which you can get from tempers. So there are these relatively powerful tempers, Death Trap cooldown reduction that you can put on rings and neck. You can get it 3 times. You don't actually need it 3 times later on, but for the start, this is a very easy way to get it very low. And then you can have a bunch of extra random cooldown reduction. In my case, I actually have a pretty decent Shaco here, but again, this is not required. You can actually play this without any cooldown on the helm, and you can still get away with that. But for the start, maybe you can also go with like a legendary helm, for example, that has cooldown reduction or so. But yeah, you want to try to get to around 10 and a half seconds or so here on the Death Trap. Once you achieve that, you can actually instantly reset your Death Trap with preparation. So that's our specialization here. And it says every time you spend 75 energy, you get -5 seconds on your ultimate cooldown. And the way that we spend the energy is with the Beastfall Boots. So Beastfall Boots says that you consume all of your energy when you use a core skill to then deal extra damage. And we can make our Death Trap into a core skill with the Scoundrel's Ladder chest. So this is kind of the late game combo. The way this works is you spam the Death Trap, it is a core skill, it consumes your energy, the preparation resets your ultimate, and repeat. And the energy comes back instantly as well, thanks to the Aftermath passive, which we have down here, and also on the pants that go with this build. So this gives you instantly all of your energy back, and you have like an infinite loop of spending all the energy and regenerating all the energy every time you press the button. And not only that, but it also resets all your other cooldowns. So you can spam your dash, your shadow stab, your dark shroud, anything you have on a bar constantly. Now there are various setups like this one here, for example, that go for the Banished Lord's Talisman and actually try to achieve 275 maximum resources, because then you can make this a guaranteed overpower every single time. And overpower is very strong, that we have that in many builds, and this is no exception here. So you can achieve this by actually stacking up a lot of maximum resources. For example, the Harlequin Crest, you can get it on the boots. There's also the potion, for example. And there is a momentum key passive and also an aspect called Galvanizing Slasher. It's a resource aspect that can also give you extra maximum resources. So this is another combo to do. And in that case, you can actually get 3 preparation procs at once, which makes this whole cooldown requirement much more lenient, because with 3 preparation procs, you can get -15 on your Death Trap. So if you have something like a 15 and a half seconds cooldown on your Death Trap, then you proc this 3 times. In that case, you don't need to stack that much cooldown reduction. But it's kind of hard to reach that amount of energy early on, so I'm actually not even playing this combo at all. And you see I don't even have Banished Lord's Talisman equipped, and I get my overpowers another way, and that is with the Xan rune. So currently I am running Sun and Xan, which is cast an ultimate skill 2 times, and then you get guaranteed crit and overpower for a little bit. And since we are spamming this ultimate like 2 times a second basically, we constantly get overpowers. Not every single hit is overpowered, but a lot of it is overpowered. And this is actually a very decent way to just kind of get this setup rolling without investing into all of this energy, without investing into like all this cooldown. You just have that basically. So as long as you can get this rune, it's a legendary rune unfortunately, the Xan, you can actually make this work as well and actually play similar to what I'm doing right now. Now the overpowers are not exactly required to make the whole setup work. It's just that overpower is just really strong, so you want to use it one way or another. So you can either do the Banished Lords route with stacking 275 maximum energy, or you go the Xan route here with the runes. And like this, you actually don't have to stack the energy. And in fact, it opens up some other combos here. For example, getting more damage from stuff like close quarters combat. So that's actually something that I'll probably work towards and see how that goes instead of sticking to momentum for now. This is just kind of like an early game choice I have here, but later we'll go for this once I actually have the item. Now the thing is, what do you actually do when you don't have any of those uniques or when you don't have this cooldown combo properly set up? Well, it looks like this here. So you can change your key passive yet again to Exposure, which is the original trap key passive. And it allows you to reset your traps, including the death trap, by just using lucky hits. So in that case, you see that here right now I use Barrage to spam into packs, and those Barrage hits give me lucky hits, including the death trap itself. It also produces lucky hits. And in large packs, you can just constantly reset your death trap with the extra attacks, 20% of the cooldown at a time. So if you look at the cooldown of the death trap here, it doesn't come back instantly when I press it, but it kind of rotates around with like a few ticks and then it comes back. So this is the Exposure key passive. And the gameplay you see here right now is basically me right after hitting level 60, just equipping a bunch of random stuff I gambled from like 2000 obols. And well, walking in there basically with my rogue with no uniques and like no eyes in the dark and no beastfall boots and no scoundrel's letters at this point. I didn't kill any boss at this point. I just walked into a pit and unlocked Torment 3 right away in like a 2-minute run. So this is what you see here in the starter variant. So if you look at this here, we have the Exposure key passive. So with lucky hits, you can actually invest a little bit into lucky hits. For example, there's like a passive here. You can maybe equip something like a Fist of Fate. I think I had like some random Fist of Fate lying around, so I just threw that on and that just helped you out. But it doesn't really matter because you have enough lucky hit anyway. But every time this triggers, with a pretty high chance, you get minus 30% of your active cooldowns. So you trigger this a few times and your death trap is fully reset, sometimes instantaneously. So in very large packs, you can even just reset that. So this is not something you want to rely on in the late game because of all the cooldown shenanigans I explained earlier with preparation. But for the early game, when you have nothing, this is a very good way to get started. So in case you want to make a rogue of your own, or you have one right now that is kind of like in the early stages of progression, somewhere at level 60 in Torment 1 or Torment 2, I can recommend you just switch to this setup basically. It will work right away. And the more you invest into lucky hits, the more this will just work out. And then you can start farming up those items. You can go for the bosses on Torment 1 or Torment 2, get an Eyes in the Dark, get a Beastfall boost, etc. Try to get a combo online, and then also get those Death Trap cooldown reduction tempers online. And most of the rest of the setup is actually fairly straightforward. Since we constantly reset all of our cooldowns thanks to preparation, we can take any cooldown on a bar and just spam it all the time. So for example, here I have Concealment, I have Dark Shroud, so we get our damage reduction, and we have a Shadow Imbuement. Now the Death Trap itself cannot be Shadow Imbued, but we can apply it, for example, with our Dash or our Shadow Step, and this helps us with some of the choices we have on the Paragons here. So Paragon board looks like this here. I also took the one from Mippy from the guide, but we have, for example, Eldritch Bounty, so this is why we have Shadow Imbuement on the bar. This can be replaced if you want. So for example, you can put Exploit Weakness there as a kind of like a passive proc. In my case, I actually have both. So there's a little bit of like options here on the Paragons, just to like, make this or that work. Then there's also Deadly Ambush. It just kind of, works with the setup. It gives you extra crit damage. We're going for 100% crit chance. And then there's also No Witness, which we have here. So for any build that scales ultimates, this is kind of a must-have. We have ultimate damage from our weapons, for example, on our gems. And you can also get it here from the board itself. And you can also temper it if you really have to for that maximum multiplier. In the guide here, there's also the Dance Macabre board. So this is this one. This one gives you a 75% multiplier if you cast a subterfuge or mobility skill before your death trap. So dash and shadow step are our mobility skills, for example. And then we have concealment here. That is a subterfuge skill. And the way this actually works is that you can constantly press concealment in between your death trap casts. So you kind of like, for example, hold down right click for the death trap. That's what I do. I have right click death trap, so I hold this and then I shift left click my concealment every time between the death traps. And like this, you can actually activate this Dance Macabre bonus. Maybe not 100% of the time because it's a bit tricky with the timing, but most of the time at least you will get this bonus here. Or if you try to slow it down a little bit, you can try to get it every single time, basically. It's a very strong multiplier and easily beats other legendary nodes here on the Paragons. So even if you don't do it perfectly, it's usually a win. And the final result is something like this here. So if you look at my skill bar, for example, you see that I'm constantly trying to press the concealment in between my death trap casts. And this also makes sure that you always have unstoppable. You can break out of any CC all the time. And then it's just like dash, shadow step. I also have a jar rune here with a Neo plus jar combo, so I can teleport around and it can go really fast. The death trap pulls everything in from basically the entire screen radius, and you just press all your other buttons once in a while, like the Dark Shroud and the Shadow Imbuement here. There's also other tech choices you can make. So for example, for the higher tiers, you don't need the double mobility skills necessarily. So you can go with just one of them, and then you can have like a Caltrops or a Poison Trap in there for a bit more damage output. So there's a few things you can change here to, switch it up a little bit depending on what you need. And the good thing is that in a late game, this thing also becomes extremely tanky thanks to the overpower gameplay. Overpower builds in general just stack a lot of life. So if you have the Banish Lord's Talisman, there's extra life here. If you have a Doombringer, that is extremely good. It just gives you like immortality and it buffs your damage thanks to all this extra life with the overpowers. Or if you don't have that, then in the game you can also just go for it instead of like this here we have another normal weapon, but try to prioritize a bunch of these life rolls basically. And this makes it so that you just don't really die with this build. Another tech that I included here, for example, compared to the guide, is that I went with the Uriva main power. So we have that here. This is also just more cooldown reduction. So in case you are not quite there yet, I'm just running this for now to actually fix my cooldown reduction, because without it, I just don't really have enough. It's kind of tight. So this can help you out early on, but then later you can go with the Beast in the Eyes. This can give you the freezes, for example, for Frigid Finesse, which is one of the kind of signature rogue passives here. Right now, I'm not running it, but as I'm just progressing up here, it doesn't really matter. So this is something that we need later on, because this part has so much power, we don't really have to go all in on this, for example. One note about the weapon choice here right now. So I have double swords and a crossbow right now. It can actually matter a little bit. Basically, depending on the last skill that you used, you will deal damage either with your melee weapons or with your ranged weapon when you use the death trap. So in the example where you have, for example, barrage in your setup, you will have your ranged weapon in hand. And if that's a crossbow, you have more damage per activation of your death trap. You don't really care that much about like giga stacking attack speed most of the time with this build. So it's nice to have a little bit of attack speed, but it's probably better to just have like a more like harder hitting weapon basically. So I go for the crossbow. You can also have the crossbow in your hand, for example, when you have Caltrops on your bar. Caltrops is considered a ranged skill, and it will also put your crossbow in your hand. But if you have a setup like I do here right now with just dash and shadow step and then, for example, momentum, and you don't actually have any of those like range skills or Caltrops on your bar, then you will actually use your melee weapons instead. In that case, yeah, I have the swords or daggers. The daggers are faster and they have close damage, which I think is a slightly higher value, but then you have also this higher attack speed and you don't necessarily want it. So I'm going for the swords. But overall, it's mostly kind of a preference thing, and it doesn't affect it that much compared to bow versus crossbow. Also, an important note about the aspects is that we actually stack up all these grenade modifiers thanks to the Trickster's aspect. So this one says that your death trap receives the stun grenade benefits. So we can get all these other stun grenade aspects here: Artful Initiative, we have the Surprise, and we also have Opportunists. There's 4 of them. You want to get them all basically. And then we also have a Vehement Brawler with its extra ranks and some extra damage. So the ranks also help the cooldown. And then we have a Epoch Furor, which is like the biggest one here. Basically, you put it on a 2-handed, and like this, you have tons of damage multipliers. And the good part is, compared to most other rogue builds, almost all of your damage modifiers actually work all the time on unstoppable elites, on bosses. In fact, this is actually a very good build to kind of push high and kill bosses fast anyway, even when they're not staggered, which is kind of unique to the class. And that's pretty much how the main components of the build work. The rest is kind of details, so you can also go check out the planner or the guide. I'll link all of this down in the description as well. If you have any questions, you can also stop by my stream. I'll be blasting with the DevTrap Rogue for a while now anyway. And as I mentioned, I have played this build up and down already in previous seasons. Now it's just like a little bit different, basically. But yeah, I hope that I could explain everything and clear up all those questions, because I hear from a lot of people that are trying to make the rogue work that they have trouble getting the cooldown to work or getting the resets properly and so on. So there are various ways of doing it. You start with the exposure when you have nothing, and then you can do the preparation-based resets when you have enough maximum energy and the uniques, and you just, refill and empty your resources every single time. So that's it for this guide. I hope this helps you. Wish you good luck with the rogue in Season 8. Stay tuned for more videos, and I'll see you guys next time.